My ex abandoned me and our baby 15 years ago, now she's back with her new man demanding to be a mom again. My name's Tom, I'm 33 now, and honestly, I never imagined I'd end up in the situation I'm in. This whole mess started way back when I was just 19. I met Megan, who's also 35 now, during our junior year of high school. From the moment we started talking, there was this instant connection like the kind you read about but never expect to feel for real. She was smart, funny, had this spark about her, and we just clicked. It felt like we were made for each other. We were practically joined at the hip back then. But even though we were so close, we never tied the knot. Getting married felt too heavy, too final, and we were young. We figured we had forever ahead of us, so we didn't rush anything. Life was simple. 2 kids in love, trying to carve out our place in the world. At the time, I was grinding hard trying to get my foot in the door of the finance world. I started out doing grunt work, fetching coffee, running around doing errands, but I had big dreams. I believed if I kept pushing, I'd climb the ladder. Megan, on the other hand, was working as a barista at a local cafe. She wasn't making much, but we made it work. We lived in this cramped little apartment, barely had any space, but it didn't matter. We had each other, and that made it feel like enough. Everything changed the day Megan found out she was pregnant. We hadn't planned it, but somehow, we were excited. Nervous as hell, sure, but hopeful that we could figure it out together. When our daughter Mia was born, it was hands down the most incredible and terrifying moment of my life. Megan went through a brutal 14-hour labor, and I could see how much it took out of her. It broke something in her, though I didn't realize how serious it was at the time. In those first few weeks after Mia came home, things were rough, really rough. Megan started pulling away. It was like she wasn't even there anymore. She'd sit and stare out the window for hours, barely acknowledging me or the baby. And when she did speak, it was to tear me down, calling me useless, trash, saying nothing I did was ever enough. I kept telling myself it was just the stress of being a new mom. I tried to be patient and supportive, juggling work and late-night diaper changes, hoping she'd bounce back. But things only got worse. I'd come home from work, completely wiped out, and she'd be sitting there doing nothing while Mia cried in the next room. She wouldn't even look at me. I was walking on eggshells, scared to say the wrong thing and somehow make it worse. Then one day, everything just stopped. I came home and the place was silent. Too silent. I went straight to Mia's room, and there she was red-faced, screaming in her crib. It was clear she'd been left alone for hours. I panicked. I tore through the house looking for Megan, but she was gone. Her clothes, her stuff, everything just vanished. No note. No explanation. Nothing. I called her phone straight to voicemail. I reached out to her parents, her friends, anyone who might have known something, but nobody had answers. After months of chasing shadows, I had to accept the truth: she had walked out on us. Just like that. Becoming a single dad overnight was the hardest thing I've ever done. Those early days were brutal. I was running on fumes, barely sleeping, always worried I wasn't doing enough. But thankfully, I had my parents and my sister. They stepped up in a big way, and honestly, I don't think I would have made it without them. Bit by bit, I started to find a rhythm, balancing work, feedings, diaper changes, late nights. It wasn't easy, but I figured it out because I had to. As Mia got older, I made sure she had everything she needed. She grew up to be a happy, grounded kid, even with all the chaos that had come before. When she started asking questions about her mom, I didn't lie, but I kept it simple. I didn't want to weigh her down with the full story, not while she was still so young. I just told her enough to make her feel safe and loved. For years, my life revolved around Mia and my job. I didn't really date, just didn't have the time or energy. But when Mia turned 12, I met Olivia. She was 33, kind, patient, and she understood exactly what I'd been through. We took things slow, and the best part? She and Mia hit it off right away. That meant everything to me. Eventually, Olivia and I fell in love, and she's been part of our lives ever since. Things finally felt solid. My career was on track, Mia was doing great, and Olivia brought this calmness to our home that we hadn't had in a long time. But then, everything flipped again. Just a few weeks ago, Olivia and I were out grabbing dinner when my phone rang. It was Mia. She sounded shaken, completely panicked. She was home alone, and Megan, yes, that Megan, had shown up at our front door. Out of nowhere. And she wasn't alone. She had some guy with her, Daniel, who's about 40, and introduced him as her boyfriend. Mia was blindsided. She didn't know what to do. The second I walked in the door and saw Megan standing there, I lost it. My blood was boiling. After all these years, she just shows up like she's entitled to be part of our lives again? I snapped. Said things I probably shouldn't have, but I couldn't stop myself. She had no right. Eventually, we all sat down, and she started talking. Megan claimed she'd been suffering from severe postpartum depression, and that's why she left. Said she'd spent the last 15 years finding herself, and that Daniel had encouraged her to reconnect. According to her, she was finally ready to be a mother again. She wanted a relationship with Mia. But that wasn't the worst part. Megan had the nerve to suggest we set up some kind of shared custody. She genuinely thought she could just waltz back into Mia's life and play the part of devoted mom, like the last decade and a half had never happened. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I laughed, straight up laughed in her face. Told her she was out of her damn mind. There was absolutely no way I was going to share custody with someone who had abandoned their own child without a word. I told her and Daniel to get out of my house. And I made it crystal clear, if they didn't leave, I'd be calling the cops. I warned her that I'd be speaking to my lawyer immediately and that if she tried anything, I'd fight back with everything I had. They left after that confrontation, but deep down, I knew this wasn't the end of it. I had this gut feeling Megan would try to come back around. And now, here I am, stuck trying to figure out what the hell to do next. Mia's curious, of course she is. She's 15, and she's never really known her mother. I can't fault her for wanting answers. But I'm scared. I don't trust Megan, not even a little, and I'm terrified she's going to try to slide her way back into Mia's life like nothing ever happened. I'm not even sure what Megan's legal rights are, considering she abandoned us completely. Still, I'm not about to take any risks. I've been doing everything I can to protect Mia, while still giving her space to ask questions and feel what she needs to feel. I've told her it's okay to be curious, that I understand. But I've also warned her we need to be cautious. Megan has already proven she's not someone we can rely on, and I'm not about to let her destroy what I've worked so hard to build. She broke me once. I'm not letting her do that to Mia. So now I keep wondering, am I the bad guy for saying no? For refusing to let Megan just walk back into my daughter's life after 15 years of silence? Am I wrong for wanting to protect Mia from someone who left her without so much as a goodbye? Update 1. Ever since Megan showed up on our doorstep, things have been spiraling. Before Olivia and I even made it home that night, Megan somehow got a hold of Mia's phone number. Since then, she hasn't stopped calling and texting. Message after message, full of apologies, professions of love, promises to make things right. And it didn't stop at words. Megan started sending gifts. Expensive ones too. Jewelry, designer clothes, even a brand new smartphone. Mia's overwhelmed, and honestly, so am I. I told her she doesn't have to respond to any of it, not if she's not ready. But I can see the storm of emotions behind her eyes. She's confused, torn between wanting to understand and not knowing who to trust. But it gets worse. A few days ago, Megan showed up at Mia's school. In broad daylight. She made a scene crying, begging Mia to talk to her right there in front of everyone. The school had to call me to come down. I had to physically pull her away. Megan kept shouting that she'd do anything, to be in Mia's life again. That night, I got a string of texts from Megan. She said if I didn't let her see Mia, she'd be going to court to get visitation rights. At that point, I realized I couldn't keep playing defense. I had to get ahead of this. So I called a lawyer. He explained that Megan's rights were extremely limited, especially since she abandoned Mia as an infant and never made contact all these years. That silence actually works in my favor. He told me to keep track of everything, every phone call, every message, every package, because if this does go to court, that kind of documentation is gold. He also said I should think about filing for a restraining order, especially after the school incident. Apparently, what Megan's doing could easily be seen as harassment. The idea of it makes me sick, but it might be the only way to send a clear message that her behavior isn't okay. I haven't decided yet, but it's definitely on my mind. And just when I thought it couldn't get more twisted, Megan started telling Mia that I'd been poisoning her against her. That I'd been lying about the past. She's even claiming I was abusive and that I cheated, completely false. She's trying to flip the script, make herself the victim in a story she walked out of. Mia hasn't said much, but I can see how much it's eating at her. Megan's been reaching out to my family too, trying to win them over. But they're not having it. My parents and sister are furious with her. My mom actually called Megan a selfish, heartless woman to her face, and you know what? That felt good to hear. Still, Megan keeps trying, desperate to turn someone, anyone, against me. And now Daniel, her boyfriend, has gotten involved, and not in a good way. He showed up at my job last week. At first, he tried to play nice, but then he started dropping these vague, threatening comments. Said there'd be consequences if I didn't let Megan see Mia. I don't know what that means exactly, but it was enough to rattle me. So I've started documenting everything. Something tells me this is just the beginning, and I'm not taking any chances. The more I think about it, the more I worry there's something else going on. Something beyond just reconnecting. I've read the stories, people who try to get custody just to chase after child support or other financial gains. And now, I can't help but wonder if that's what this is. Megan never paid a cent toward Mia's upbringing, and I wouldn't put it past her to try and sue for something outrageous like back support or even alimony, despite the fact that we were never married. I'm documenting every interaction, every visit, every threat. And I've decided I need to sit Mia down for a real, honest conversation. She's not a little kid anymore. She's old enough to hear the truth. She deserves to know what's going on, and more importantly, she needs to know that I'll always be here for her, no matter what. Keeping Mia safe, physically and emotionally, is my #1 priority. Always has been. Always will be. And I'll fight tooth and nail to protect her from anything or anyone that might try to harm her. I can't shake the feeling that this is only the beginning. But whatever's coming, I'm ready to face it head on. Update 2. After everything that's happened lately, I finally realized it was time to stop shielding Mia from the full truth. I've been trying to protect her for so long that I didn't notice how much the secrecy was actually hurting her. She's caught in the middle of this mess, and she has every right to know how we got here. So I sat her down and told her everything. I told her about the early days, how Megan and I were once happy, how things started falling apart after she was born, and how Megan slowly drifted away until she just left one day without saying a word. I explained that I'd spent years trying to understand why she left, and that I was just as shocked back then as Mia is now. I also told her about the lies Megan's been spreading recently, that I was supposedly abusive, that I cheated. And I made it clear, from the bottom of my heart, that none of it is true. I've always done my best to be honest with Mia, and she deserved to hear my side straight from me, not through the twisted filter of someone who abandoned her. It was a tough conversation, but Mia handled it better than I expected. She listened. She asked thoughtful questions. And even though I could see how much it hurt, I could also tell that she appreciated finally hearing the truth. Mia was definitely upset after I told her everything, but I could also see something shift in her, a kind of quiet relief, like a weight had been lifted. It was as if I'd finally answered questions she hadn't even known how to ask. After we talked, she told me she needed space from Megan. She said she wasn't ready to talk to her or see her, at least not for a while. I completely understood, and I made it clear that no matter what she decided, I'd stand by her. So when Megan tried reaching out again, Mia ignored her. And once Megan realized she wasn't getting a response, she lost it. She came to our house, completely uninvited, pounding on the door and demanding to see Mia. I had to physically block her from coming inside. She started screaming, crying, accusing me of ruining everything. The meltdown got so bad that Daniel had to drag her away, literally, kicking and screaming. That was the moment it really hit me just how unstable she had become. Not long after that, I got hit with the paperwork. Megan was officially filing for custody and visitation rights. I can't say I was shocked, but it still hit like a punch to the gut. The thought of being dragged into a legal battle over my own daughter was something I'd hoped I'd never have to deal with. But it was obvious now that Megan wasn't going to back down. So, my lawyer and I got to work. We filed a strong counterclaim that detailed everything: her abandonment, the emotional toll it had taken on Mia, and the harassment Megan had been dishing out recently. We included every bit of documentation I'd been collecting: text messages, phone records, her meltdown at Mia's school, and that scene she caused at our house. My lawyer was confident we had a solid case, but I knew it was going to be a rough road. Once the court hearings began, the pressure really kicked in. Megan and her legal team tried to paint her as someone who had made some bad choices but was now healed and eager to make things right. They blamed her disappearance on postpartum depression and tried to spin her story as one of redemption. But we had the receipts. We showed that this went way beyond a mental health crisis. We pointed out that she made no effort to reach out for 15 straight years and that her sudden reappearance, with Daniel in tow, raised more than a few red flags. As the legal process dragged on, more truths came to light, some that shook me to my core. During one of the hearings, it came out that Megan had a long-standing diagnosis of bipolar disorder, something she never once mentioned during our time together. In fact, she'd been diagnosed years before we even met, but kept it hidden. Her lawyer tried to use this as an explanation for her past behavior, but it only made things worse. To the court, it reinforced the idea that Megan was unstable and unfit to have any real custody over Mia. But that wasn't even the worst of it. We also discovered that Megan and Daniel were in serious financial trouble. They were drowning in debt. And it started becoming pretty obvious that they hadn't come back into our lives out of love or remorse, they were desperate. My lawyer managed to dig into Daniel's background and found out he had a criminal record. Turns out, he'd been charged with fraud multiple times, involved in shady financial schemes, scamming people out of their money. It became clear they were trying to use Megan's reunion with Mia as a gateway to get something out of me, whether that was money, support, or just sympathy they could cash in on. Once all of this came out in court, the entire atmosphere changed. The judge wasn't impressed, far from it. He saw through the act. In the end, the court ruled in my favor. Megan's custody claim was thrown out, and her visitation rights were drastically restricted. She was granted supervised visits only, and even those would be monitored by a court-appointed guardian. The relief I felt was massive. But even though we won, the emotional damage was done. Mia and I were exhausted, mentally, emotionally, completely wrung out. Update 3. Just when I thought things were finally starting to calm down, I got a phone call I never expected. It was Megan's younger sister, Amy. Back when Megan and I were together, Amy and I were close, like family. But after Megan disappeared, Amy and I lost contact. I hadn't heard a word from her in over a decade. She said she needed to talk to me, said it was important. Given everything that had been happening, I was more curious than suspicious, so I agreed to meet her. When we sat down, she laid it all out. She'd known Megan had disappeared, of course, but she hadn't known the full story until about 5 years ago. That's when she started piecing together the truth. At the time, she chose not to reach out, she didn't want to reopen old wounds. But after hearing about the custody case and everything Megan had been doing, she couldn't stay quiet anymore. Amy told me she was willing to testify in court. She wanted to expose Megan's lies and make sure Mia didn't get hurt any more than she already had. I was cautious at first, wasn't sure if this was the right move, but the more Amy shared, the more I realized her testimony could finally bring this nightmare to a close. And wow, did Amy deliver. In court, she revealed the real reason Megan vanished after Mia was born, and it had nothing to do with postpartum depression or needing to find herself. The truth? Megan had been having an affair with a wealthy older man who was a regular at the coffee shop where she worked. He promised her a glamorous life, convinced her to ditch her family, and she took the bait. She walked out on me and Mia to chase money and freedom. For years, they traveled around the country, blowing through his savings, living it up without a care in the world. But when the money dried up, so did the relationship. Megan dumped him and came crawling back home. That's when she met Daniel, who just happened to have a knack for manipulating people and finding opportunities to exploit. Together, they cooked up this whole plan to reconnect with Mia and me. But it was never about love or redemption. It was about money. Whether it was through child support, guilt-tripping us into helping them, or dragging us through court, they were hoping to get something out of us. All those years I carried guilt, wondering what I could have done differently. Wondering if I somehow failed as a partner, or as a father. And now, I find out that Megan never had any intention of being a mother at all. She didn't leave because she was broken, she left because she was selfish. And Mia and I were just collateral damage in her chase for a better life. The final nail in the coffin came when we dug deeper into Daniel's background. What we found explained everything. Apparently, he'd learned about my financial success through some mutual acquaintances. He knew I'd built a solid life for myself and saw Megan's connection to Mia as a golden opportunity, something he could cash in on. Their plan was pretty straightforward: get Megan back into Mia's life, establish some kind of legal footing through custody or visitation, and then hit me with a lawsuit for back child support or anything else they thought they could squeeze out of me. Daniel wasn't in this for love or family, he was chasing a payday. And Megan? She went along with it because she was desperate. She saw the scheme as her last shot at reclaiming a lifestyle she lost when the money from her last relationship dried up. But the whole thing blew up in their faces. Thanks to Amy's testimony and all the documentation we'd gathered, the truth came crashing down like a house of cards. Once everything was out in the open, Megan's entire world unraveled. Her friends, her family, even the few people who had still been standing by her, turned their backs. No one could believe the depth of her lies, the manipulation, or the betrayal. And Daniel? The second he realized there wasn't a dime to be made, he bailed. He cleaned out whatever cash they had left and disappeared, leaving Megan completely alone, financially, emotionally, everything. In the end, Megan hit rock bottom. She had a total breakdown and had to be hospitalized for a short time. When she was finally released, she was barely recognizable, a shadow of the woman I once knew. The court threw out her case completely. I was granted full legal custody of Mia, with no obligations to Megan whatsoever. No visitation, no contact, no responsibility. Just peace. Mia, given everything she'd been through, handled it better than I expected. She's definitely angry at Megan for the lies, for the manipulation, for putting her through this mess. But underneath all that anger, there's still a sliver of pity. A small part of her still wants to understand, to see if her mother is even capable of being someone different. So, Mia made a decision. She told me she'd like to have minimal, supervised contact with Megan, nothing more, just to see how it goes. I agreed, under strict conditions. It has to be completely on her terms, and always in a safe, controlled environment. I'm not taking any chances. Final update. Through all of this chaos, Olivia has been my anchor. She stood by me through every confrontation, every legal twist, every emotional breakdown. I honestly don't know how I would have made it through any of this without her. She's been more than just a partner, she's been my strength. Once the dust settled and things started to feel stable again, I began thinking more seriously about our future. Olivia's been in Mia's life for years now, and she's been nothing but loving, patient, and supportive. After everything we've faced together, I realized I was ready to take the next step. So, a few weeks ago, I proposed. It wasn't anything flashy, no grand gesture or big crowd. Just a quiet moment between the two of us, full of love and gratitude. And it was perfect. She said yes. Now, we're planning our wedding, and it finally feels like we're turning the page, stepping into a new chapter full of promise and peace. After so many years of dealing with Megan's absence, and then her destructive return, it feels good to focus on something that brings joy and hope. As for Megan, she's reportedly staying sober and is now getting treatment for her bipolar disorder. I've heard through the grapevine that she's trying to straighten her life out, but it's hard to know how sincere those efforts really are. She's been allowed to have one supervised visit with Mia per month, and those are strictly monitored. Everything is still completely up to Mia. She decides if and when she wants to go. It's been a hard adjustment for her, but I think, in a way, it's been helpful. It's giving her a bit of closure, even if it's not the kind she hoped for. Megan has a long, long road ahead of her if she ever wants to rebuild any kind of relationship with Mia. And as far as I'm concerned, that road stays closed unless Mia chooses to open it. I've made it very clear, there's no way I'll let Megan hurt our daughter again. I'm watching everything carefully to make sure that doesn't happen. To everyone who's offered advice, encouragement, or even just listened, thank you. Your support has meant more to me than I could ever properly say. We're finally moving forward now. We're healing, growing, and building a future without the shadows of the past hanging over us. And for the first time in a very long time, it feels like we're finally free.